Shaq, I'll start with you. What do you make of the comments there from Mikel Arteta? He is in an awkward spot. His goalie's just had a clean sheet against the defending champions, one of the best teams in the world, and yet he's having to defend them.
Yeah, but it's a good week for Mikel Arteta to be having to defend some of his own decisions. You just beat Manchester City. You can get away with a lot. But to Arteta's answer, it is his fault. I think a lot of some of the uncertainty around the goalkeeping position, and I heard the crowd getting antsy as the game went on. I think a lot of that is kind of born in how Arteta managed the switch from Ramsdale, who was in goal for all of last season, Arsenal's highest finish in 20-odd years or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden has found himself on the bench for David Raya, when, I'll speak for myself here, I don't think Aaron Ramsdale did an awful lot wrong. But Arteta kind of laid the groundwork and saying that he thought about subbing the keeper in and out during the course of a game over the last couple of seasons, and he regrets not doing it. He brings Raya in because of his ability to play the ball out from the back, and then not once but on a few occasions in the last few games, he's been caught out. As it happens, again, because of the opposition and it not being punished, it's okay to take that knock on the chin, whether you're Arteta or David Raya. But there's been more than enough alarm bells to concern a neutral observer.
On the performance itself, are there enough alarm bells to consider a change right now?
No, to consider a change, no. I think you make this decision, this has to go on far more consistently. I think some of those mistakes have to be bigger for want of a...
But was there a big mistake for Ramsdale, necessarily?
No.
I mean, the bar wasn't very high for Ramsdale. Why is it not the same for Raya?
And again, I still believe that Ramsdale is the better of the two goalkeepers. Mm-hmm. I saw absolutely no need for Ramsdale to lose a spot, but because you make that decision doesn't mean that as a manager, every time a goalkeeper has a mistake, whether it's punished or not, that you swap him in and out. I think that doesn't do Ramsdale any justice, and it certainly doesn't do David Raya any either.
Is this really the position where Arteta needs to be tinkering, looking for an edge?
Well, he's looking to improve the team in any position he can, so I don't particularly agree with it, but that's what he's looking to do. If he feels... Look, let me put it another way. He's not putting David Raya in because he thinks Arsenal are a poorer team because of it. Mm-hmm. He thinks they're a better team. There is an argument. He's played 4 matches, right? One of those matches he got away with it against Man City to a certain extent because A, they won the game. 2, any sort of flapping from crosses that I know we'll probably have a little look at some point. And they taken the ball in when Alvarez shut him down. He got away with that. A couple of dodgy passes out. The Lens game, he didn't get away with it. The other 2 games, I can't remember if he made any mistakes with his feet. I mean, imagining there was some risky passes. So we're already at a 50% negativity rate almost in the 4 games that he's played. So that's telling you that he's taken these risks every game that he plays. We can sit here and argue about whether this is harsh on Ramsdale or not. I'm in agreement with Shaka. I think it is. And I think David Raya has pluses and minuses to his game. But this is all going to wash out as the season goes forward. As Shaq said, it was pretty easy to sit there and take the blame and defend the goalkeeper at the weekend because they've just beaten Man City for the first time in X amount of games, right? They've just beaten Man City in the Premier League. They've just taken a bit of pressure off. So it was very, very easy to say, hey, I told him to keep doing this. It's on me. He's got big this, he's got big that. Had it gone the opposite way, that press conference would have been completely different.
Casey, you're no stranger to competition in goal. Everybody knows about your longtime battle from the U.S. team with Brad Friedel. You took the job off Julian Lopetegui when you got to Rayo Vallecano. What do you think of what's happening at Arsenal right now?
Yeah, I think it all basically stems from the start of how Raya got to Arsenal and the confusion behind it and why Arteta felt that this is what they needed to do at this point in time. And when he made that commitment financially to bring in Raya, then the decision was basically made. He felt, to Craig's point, that he must be the better goalkeeper between the two. We can all think differently or think that there was a close enough there that it really wasn't something that Arsenal needed to address at this point in time. I understand that if Turner's leaving to go to Nottingham Forest, that you needed cover, so then what normally is the case, you bring in a veteran goalkeeper that you won't hesitate if your starting goalkeeper slips up and isn't playing well, or you bring in a young up-and-coming kid that pushes him for that starting spot. Instead, you sign 2 number ones, which causes all kinds of problems in your changing room. It causes problems with the fans. And then when that new goalkeeper comes in and has shaky moments like Craig and Shaka talked about, the fans then get on the back, and the manager has no other choice but to back the guy that he spent a ton of money to bring in to replace a guy that really didn't need to be replaced. So why Arteta decided at this stage that this was the controversy he wanted to bring into his squad, I think we're all shaking our heads on that.
That also could be part of the process, and we can call it favouritism or whatever. But I remember when I was playing for the national team, and we had a goalkeeping coach, and Alan Hodgkinson, who was also the goalkeeping coach for Rangers at the time. And the then Rangers goalkeeper was Andy Gorham, who's no longer with us, sadly. But Andy was vying with Jim Leighton, former Aberdeen and Manchester United goalkeeper, for the number 1 spot. And Jim always felt that Andy had the upper hand in the selection process. And safe to say, Jim was a bit paranoid about it because of the situation behind the scenes. So you got to also look to who's maybe Arteta's taking the advice from. Managers are, by all accounts, none of us are goalkeeping experts, although we all sit here and pontificate when a goalie leaves something at the near post or ever. But even a manager has to, I think, take a backward step sometimes to the goalkeeping coach in terms of the expertise of what a guy is good at and not good at. And maybe that's going to be part of the problem for Ramsdale going forward as well, even if David Raya continues to take huge risks.
To that point, this competition for places, goalkeeper or anywhere else, is not new to the game.
But is it different between other positions in goal?
Well, it's different between other positions because you can bring in Trossard and you can play Gabriel Jesus and Trossard together. You can bring in Havertz to play on the left-hand side, and all of a sudden, if you decide, you can play Havertz and Martinelli, who he's supposed to replace, together. You can't do that with 2 goalkeepers. But even so, many a club, many a manager wants to have 2 top-notch goalkeepers. Again, this is not something new or unique to Arsenal or Arteta, but you have to learn from lessons gone in how you manage those personalities, how you manage that position, because you can't say to one, as you made to Trossard, listen, you're good enough to take Gabriel Jesus' place, but today I'm going to play on the right-hand side, or whatever it is. You can't throw them a bone that way. So you have to manage that process, because you may very well lose at least one, if not both, if it's not managed absolutely well. And that always has been my concern. Arteta is paid to decide who's his starting goalkeeper, to figure out how he manages that. My concern was he wasn't doing a good job to start with.
It goes back to the discussion we had when Arteta made the comments about, well, I should have subbed the goalkeeper off in the 60th minute or whatever it is, and I'll do it in the future. And we sort of threw it around this desk a little bit. And my point was, it's a kind of moot point, as ridiculous a comment it is, until it happens and comes back and haunts Arsenal, potentially. And this is very similar in that if we're sat here at Christmas and they've put 12... I'm just going to throw this out there. If they've won a dozen games in the trot in the Premier League, right? But yet he has made a mistake every game and he's taken all these risks, it really is going to be a moot point. It's all dependent on what Arsenal do between now and Christmas and now and the end of the season. He could make umpteen mistakes a game. If Arteta's happy with that and they're winning and they dethrone Man City, nobody's going to give a hoot. And a few people might ask him and say, well, what about the keeper? And he'll say, look at the league table. And that, at the end of the day, is what all this is going to boil down to. Now, at the moment, there is a huge question mark, and that's why we're talking about it, as to whether his mistakes, or his risks, should I say, are going to cost him.
Iñaki Caña, the goalie coach you were thinking about from Brentford, joined Arsenal in 2019. You were
And that's when you see the nervousness around coming for crosses, which he'd ordinarily do quite easily, or judgments in terms of sweeping up behind the back four. All of a sudden, he starts to second guess that as a result. And so you see his game starting to come apart slowly but surely. But again, they haven't lost, or haven't lost because of it.
Right.
We'll see how that pans out. So that's a good foundation to at least right those wrongs, that at least you win.
Well, they lost in Lens.
Yeah.
But Arteta painted it in a different way by saying, well, you know, we had so much playing, we were just terrible in the final third. And he blamed, and they were not particularly good in the final third on that night, but he was able to use that as a stone to throw at Arsenal's problem rather than the mistake that was made at the other end of the field.
Let me also say this, and I'm sure Casey will back me up here. I would love to hear his thoughts, and I'm saying this before we see the Ramsdale video. Now, for me, I've always said Ederson is the best goalkeeper playing the ball short out of the back because he is so good at playing it long. If, to the point around Ramsdale, if you press high up, if you close those spaces 5-10 yards around the box, Ederson will drill a 60-yard ball over the top into the path of the striker. So as a result, as a defense, that is the more threatening ball. That big ball over the top that leaves the striker 1-on-1. So as a defense, you cannot overcompensate. You cannot gamble and play that high pressure. So Ederson can pass it short. When you don't play long, as Raya isn't, that's when the opponents can press high, can close those spaces. And I think a lot of times in our discussion or analysis around goalkeepers and playing the ball out of the back, everybody points to Ederson, but they don't point to what he does better than anybody else.
But it's not just that he'll ping great long balls. He will also recognise and do what Casey and Xhaka used to do, and all the goalies used to do, recognise when that ball needs to go beyond the ozone layer, right? It gets the full beans. And Ederson does that now and again. Man City, you could argue, are the blueprint for modern day playing out from the back, taking big risks, right? But even they, with their manager and their goalkeeper, recognise when that big left boot just has to hoof it up the field and take what comes, right? And that's the difference at the moment, that it seems Arsenal haven't really been prepared to do that, and maybe that will cost them.
Casey, what's the bigger issue here, Raya or what Arteta's asking him to do?
Well, I mean, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think it's all part of the same situation, because the real situation is decision-making from the goalkeeper. And the goalkeeper has to be confident enough in his own ability to say, and I think this is where Ederson changed when you look at probably his first 10 games in the Premier League to afterwards, that he was taking risks that were unnecessary. And so what he said was, okay, yes, I have this ability, as Craig pointed out very well, that I can play the ball short, but I can also play a very good long ball. But it's that decision on when to do each. And then it's also that decision not to put players in precarious situations. Now, it also helps playing on a team where every player is showing for the ball. Every player is extremely confident under extreme pressure. And so you know that if I shove a ball into somebody in this circumstance, they're probably going to deal with it. But then also it is that idea that points in the first 5 games are just as important as points in the last 5 games. And if I do something stupid in goal that takes away a couple points, that could be the difference in me winning the title. So let's do a risk management on my ability plus my teammates' ability plus, yes, the manager's telling me to do this, but I'm still in control. The ball is in my hands or at my feet, And I have to make the best decision for my team under these circumstances to get 3 points.
Arsenal fans are going to be getting really mad at us here, aren't they? Because, you know...
Are we making a mountain out of a molehill?
No, I think it's a talking point because, I think it is a position that is obviously hugely important. And I don't want to say more than it ever was, because it's always been important to have somebody who can bail you out behind you. But I suppose now the dynamic of it and how the position is played, for most clubs, not every club, some clubs are happy to just hoof it. For a lot of clubs, the dynamic of that position has changed dramatically in terms of the ball at the feet. So I think it is important, but I'm looking at it here, sitting thinking, right, I'm an Arsenal fan watching this, and I'm getting a bit irate because we're second top of the league and we've just beat Man City, and we're all getting mad about it. But it is, if we're dissecting what may and may not cost Arsenal and what is going to push Arsenal forward to be better than what they were last year, well, it's certainly not at the moment Kai Havertz. It's not Hurricane Timber because he's out the side injured, as good a player as he is. So what is going to push them to be better? Is this one position going to be good enough to get this ball rolling all the way from the back, or is this an unnecessary risk that Mikel Arteta really didn't have to take? But by listening to him and by his actions, I get the feeling he feels really strongly about this one. And in my opinion, looking at his and listening to his rhetoric, I think David Raya is going to have to make some particularly bad mistakes before a stubborn Mikel Arteta is going to back down and go, you know what, I got this one wrong, back to Aaron Ramsdale. That's kind of how I'm reading this at the moment.
I am still a firm believer, and yes, to use Craig's term, while the dynamic of the position has changed, I am still a firm believer in a goalkeeper is there to keep the ball out the net first and foremost. Everything else comes a distant second. If you're putting us in increasing danger of conceding, that's not what I'm asking my keepers to do.
Casey, what do you think here? Do you agree with Shaka? Maybe the priority on a ball-playing goalie has become too much here for Mikel Arteta?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember a conversation that I had with Martin O'Neill when I was at Leicester, and he had made a comment that that my backup Kevin Poole was really good with his feet, and of course, I took that as, I'll show you I can be just as good with my feet, and I did some stupid things and put my team at risk and paid the price for one of them against Arsenal. And he calls me into his office and we're having a conversation, and he's like, Casey, look, if I need you to help us create goal scoring chances, we're in a lot of trouble. I need you to keep the ball out of the back of the net. And we have other players whose job it is to score goals and to create chances. So you do your job, and we have other guys to do their job. And now this new idea is that I want my goalkeeper to be Zidane and also Peter Schmeichel. How is that possible to be both? Then if that's what you want, then put a field player in goal and just let him play, and put your best midfielder in goal, let him play 20 yards out, and hope to God you outscore your opponents. Because when push comes to shove and you need your goalkeeper to make some saves, that's going to win you games. Him making a 20-yard pass to a player under pressure in midfield is probably not going to win you matches consistently.
And that we had that up yesterday. Raya, 4 clean sheets in 6. Ramsdale, 2 clean sheets in 6. And there might be some people out there who are looking at that and going, oh, that's why David Raya's playing. As we discussed very shortly yesterday, because if you've got half a brain in your head, you don't really need it explaining. If you have the performances of defenders like Arsenal had at the weekend, particularly the 2 centre-halves, Gabriel and Saliba, who did not give Erling Haaland or those around him a kick, right? It's much easier to keep a clean sheet. When you've got centre-halves and full-backs and midfielders that are not playing well and making mistakes, it's not really the goalkeeper's fault, is it? To start throwing around stats and say, well, you've only got 1 clean sheet in it. Because that's like saying, it's all down to you. When, you know, just clearly it's not. So a lot of a goalkeeper's performance is also dependent on what's around them. And a lot of people get caught up, and that stat's not. There's been loads of stats flown about save percentages and all this. You can pretty much knock them all, get a lot of them and throw them in the trash can. Because there's a lot more nuances to what goes about that position and making saves and how the opponents are striking the ball and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this one's going to rumble for sure. This one is absolutely going to rumble. And we'll see where it goes. But David Raya's not getting dropped anytime soon.
No, the Raya v Ramsdale debate will surely go on.